Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Howdy. How are things going? Welcome to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by, right here, AMSOIL. I am trying a little bit different setup today. I got a slightly different orientation. I'm actually using different equipment today. And speaking of different equipment, I'm going to have a future episode where I just talk about equipment that can help boost your whole sponsorship program. But not today, though. Today I got a different topic that I'm going to cover, and that is all around what do you do if a sponsor approaches you? What's the action that you take? So we're going to talk about that today. Looks like we got Steve, Mark, Matt. Welcome. What do you do if a sponsor approaches you? This is just, it's an interesting thought. There's a number of people who have had this happen, but this show is going to be targeted towards people who maybe have not had it happen, or they might not even be thinking about sponsorship. So we'll talk about both of those scenarios. But right before that, just a couple notes. AMSOIL, they've been a great partner for us, and I just want to give them a quick shout out. GSP XTV, they've been supporting the live show now for a long time. I think it may be close to a year. I'd have to check in on that. And just another quick reminder about our last show that just released. It was with Joe Sylvester of High Octane Coffee. He's also a monster truck driver. He's been on the show a couple times before. So he just did a show. I got my High Octane stuff here as well. Good stuff overall. Pit Pass is something that they got pretty cool. Check that out. But either way, let's get into the topic here. This is actually something that Joe Sylvester and I talked about very briefly in the last episode, and I just felt like I needed to dive in deeper today. So I'm picturing a scenario where there's a person who's, let's say they've been riding backcountry for years, or maybe they're, an off-roader and they got this huge social media following, or I don't know, maybe they're a racer and they're just like too proud to reach out for a sponsor, and someone gets a hold of them. That's what this show is really targeted for. So I'm gonna I guess walk you through some scenarios or ways you can handle that. So just if you've never been in this spot, I want you to kind of think about it for a minute, and I'm gonna go through a couple steps. So I've actually been in this spot before. When I first started doing the podcast, I did have an intention of getting sponsors at some point. Like I had the goal and the intent that the show would produce some sort of revenue, because I didn't know any other way to keep it going, because it does cost money to buy equipment and produce stuff and Facebook ads and Instagram ads and all that stuff. So I had an intent, but I guess I just wasn't expecting it to happen so soon. So I was actually hit with this one time. It was when Jeff Van Stal was on the show for episode 2, and then when I was getting ready to release episode 5, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about us getting a partnership going?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I guess I probably should have thought about that." And I don't know. It took me a minute to kind of get my bearings and figure that out. So I kind of want to share some of the things that I've learned. And actually, since then, every single one of the partners or sponsors that have come on the show have reached out to me. They said, "Hey, we like what you're doing. We'd like to work with you a little bit more." So I'm going to share some of those experiences there. Plus, a lot of people have come on the show. They've given me examples of this. So I'm just trying to bring all that together. So again, what do you do after you get approached by a sponsor if they reach out to you? So first one, if you're already prepared for this stuff, then you don't sweat it. You're good to go, right? You're good to go. But let's just assume at this point that you haven't already thought about these things. Now, once I go through everything, you'll have this opportunity to prep, and it won't be scary for you. You'll know how to handle it. So, okay, first one, someone reaches out to you. What do you need to do? If they say, "Hey, we would like to sponsor you, we'd like to work with you, we'd like to support you in some way, shape, or form," the first thing I want you to do is understand their goals. Start asking those questions right up front. If you can get on a phone call or meet in person, that's fantastic. But if not, that's fine if you start asking some questions. via email or whatever platform you're using. Just start understanding what are the goals, why you, why did they reach out to you, what do they want to know from you, what are their marketing goals within the next 1 to 5 years, how can they help you achieve those goals. Like if you say those last two things, they're gonna be even more excited. But start by asking those questions, start understanding what their intent is, why the heck are they even reaching out to you, what are they trying to accomplish. So that, in my opinion, is step one if someone does reach out to you about a sponsorship deal that you weren't necessarily expecting. The next one, this actually probably is the hardest one to do, but I want you to understand your goals and your purpose. Because you might get to this point and realize there's no reason in going any further. So if you look at your purpose and your goals and they don't align with the goals and the purpose that the company just said, you end the conversation. You politely decline the offer and say, you know what, I don't think this is going to work right. I have some different interest in mind. That's fine to do that. But understanding your purpose and understanding your goals, gosh, it sounds easy, but it's super hard. I recommend sitting down a pad of paper or, I don't know, scrapbook, however you process information. Sit down by yourself and start just writing stuff down. Write out what your purpose is. There's actually tools online that can help you with this. If you ever Google, help me find my purpose or a mission statement, personal mission statement, either way, all of these different tools are going to help you better understand who you are, what your purpose is, what your goals are, and that's going to help you decide if this is even the right partner for you to pursue. So step one, understand their goals. Step two, basically understand your goals. All right. Step three, I think you need to analyze your reach. So essentially what you're starting to do now is you've said, look, I do want to pursue this company. I do think it could be a good fit. They already are interested. You already got some leverage because they're interested. They reached out to you. But now I think you need to put together your actual pitch. Some people already have a pitch, right? If you already have your pitch, fantastic, all right? But if you don't, let's start building it. Now is the right time. And I think you need to do it fast. If someone reaches out to you on a Monday and says, hey, I'm interested in you, I think you need to have that pitch ready within the next couple of days. Set that expectation up front, but you need to get on it right away. But either way, I'm going to talk about here analyzing your reach. So that could mean who's your social media content, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Who's your audience? Who's your audience, right? Who are the people that are typically following you on social media? How many of them are following you? You can get a lot of these insights, through social media, especially if you have a Facebook page or an Instagram business profile, they'll give you this stuff. Pull that stuff together. Understand an average reach. So if you get 1,000 engagements per post that you put up, call it out. If you're on YouTube and you get 1,000 views for video, call it out. It's basically trying to build out what your metrics would look like from a social media reach standpoint. So that's one element of it. Two, if you're a racer, start documenting your wins. Maybe it's your win percentage or your top finishes. Let's say, you consistently finish in the top 15. All right, call that out. Maybe your goal is to consistently finish in the top 10. Either way, you're building that out, getting all this stuff together. I call it a dashboard, metrics dashboard. And it's something that you can actually keep up regularly. If you have any experience with Microsoft Excel, easy peasy, all right? But this is something you can Google as well. Other things to understand is, have you been on TV appearances? If so, how many? If not, do you plan to be? How many do you think that's gonna be? Are you doing podcast appearances, live show appearances with people? If so, again, capturing what those views might be, what the reach might be. Have you won any championships? Call that out. This is basically the start of your resume, if you haven't already guessed it. But pull this information together, get it built into a pitch, something you can present, which is a great lead in to point number 4. Write it down, okay? Write it down. That means build it into a resume, a media deck. Hey, look, Steve Reich just called it out. They've also heard them called media decks. Media deck, sponsorship deck, whatever. Like, I think the word resume is getting a little bit outdated. So if you can present a media deck, I think you're just better off. Some people might say it's a portfolio. Let's say if you do primarily do like overlanding or, backcountry riding, and you're into more of that stuff and you don't have like a race profile, maybe you have something called a portfolio, right? And some of your content you've created. Like Steven, for you, you've got a portfolio of content as well. So essentially you're pulling this stuff together in a way that you can present to the company, to whoever your representative is, that is going to include your goals. That might include how you're going to help them reach their goals. That might include your little dashboard, what we just talked about, your social media reach, number of followers, how many wins you've got. Put all that stuff in there into some comprehensive package. I've heard of people doing it on USB drives and mailing them. You could put pretty big files on Dropboxes and mail them that way. Lots of opportunities to get the information to them. One thing I will tell you is if you are not savvy technically with creating the right graphics or making it look presentable, I highly recommend pulling in an expert or a friend, right? It seems like everybody knows like their buddy or their friend that's good at this stuff. Don't be too proud to reach out to them for help. That's one of the main reasons too why we've partnered with topthepodium.com. They do this stuff for you. So if you're struggling, you can reach out to them and they'll do it. Same with website creation. So like these are all different ways to present it. I've actually seen people build their own website, put all their information right on there. It's a one-page website that they just send the link out to whoever their sponsor is. But these are good things to do. Now, if you are under a time crunch, you're not going to be able to get everything the way you want it. Start with just that base level resume, just to kind of kick things off if you're under that time crunch. If you have the time to do it, or if you can be proactive enough now, get it together now. So Stephen Rice also just said one-page snapshot of the most important info you want them to know about you. Completely agree with that. It's the most important stuff. They might not care about something you did 6-7 years ago. Maybe it's important, maybe it's not, but it's the most important things. Most likely they're not going to have much time to review it, okay? So you want to get to the point quick. I personally think that if it's highly visual and it captures your brand, you can get to that point very quickly with the visuals. So either way, write it down is key takeaway number 4. So quick summary here. Understand their goals. Understand your goals, your purpose. Analyze your reach. Write it all down. Get it in a presentable format. And then now the part that you've all been waiting for is pitch it. Number 5 is talking about pitching it. It's actually presenting the information to the sponsor. Now, a lot of times this is like the only part that people really get stressed about. But if you do everything else up front, this is easy. Easy peasy if you do everything else up front the right way and get the preparation in place. Now, if you are going to do a pitch to somebody, I highly recommend in person as the number 1 priority. If that doesn't happen, I mean, honestly, most of the time it's hard to do that. But if you can get face-to-face, do it. The next one I'd recommend is Skype or WebEx or phone call. Something that you can get, as personal as possible. I mean, picture a Skype video. You and I, as we're interacting to an extent right now, like you can see me, I can't see you, but it gives a little bit more personal element using Skype or WebEx. But yeah, next thing is just being able to hear people's voices, and the inflection gives you a little bit more personality too. So I recommend those things. If not, you can summarize things in an email. I would recommend, no matter what you do, follow up with a summary and an email, whether it's notes or something like that, because most likely, if things go well and you've decided that this still makes sense, that could help in building onto the next step, which is negotiation. So number 5, pitch it. Number 6, negotiate. Now, this is a tricky one. I don't think it's as hard as all the prep work, but it's still kind of tricky when you get to the negotiation phase because you're trying to determine what's your value and versus what value can you give them. Now, I will tell you, prioritize the value that you can give them because what we're talking about is a long-term game. So in many cases, especially if you found somebody, you've already agreed that your purpose and their purpose line up. You've already discovered that you want to work with this person. Let's think about the long term now. So I don't think this is the time to make demands. Now, if you're Travis Pastrana or whatever, one, you don't need to listen to this video if you're Travis Pastrana, but let's say you're there at that point. Well, maybe you have a little bit more leverage than other people that are just getting kind of started out. But most likely at this point, you're probably still working on your own leverage, still understanding who you are. So I don't think it's the right time to make demands, but I also don't think it's good to undersell yourself. Now, what that means is, on two levels actually, you don't want to do it for your own personal reasons to undersell yourself, but the next thing is that based off of the rest of the industry, you don't want to understand what they're capable or underestimate what they're capable of. So if you give somebody everything for nothing, there is a risk now that you've devalued what someone else might do. So it's a tricky subject. I know there's a lot of people in the sponsorship world that get pretty passionate about this too, but I think that it's just important to find that balance. I can't tell you what that balance is, but that's part of the conversation. You need to have that conversation. And Steven had just kind of made a mention too. Aim about higher than you expect and work down. Yeah, I mean, it comes to negotiations. Actually, some people go to negotiation training. I have not done this, but I'm sure you can Google it and get better advice about how to actually negotiate than I can give you. But yeah, think about what it is that you want and try to at least convey that message. If for whatever reason it doesn't work out, be willing to compromise. I think that is probably one of the things that really gets you to the end point in this type of negotiation. Again, if you have a ton of leverage, you might be able to be a little bit stronger in your negotiation, but if not, do it this way, and I think you'll feel good. At least you have a plan for a long-term approach too. So yeah, negotiate. The next one here, you've had options actually to do this every step of the way, but number 7 is accept or decline. You make your decision. Am I going to move forward or am I not? Now, this is assuming that they like everything you've said. This is assuming that they still continue to think that you align with their brand. But you can say no. You can walk away from a deal if someone reaches out. Sometimes it is not the right deal. But you're trying to vet that through this process too. You're, in a sense, interviewing them. And if you think it's the right thing, go for it. And then overpromise. Overpromise, underdeliver. Don't do that. Underpromise, overdeliver, right? Go in there and just hit it strong. If you said you were going to post their stuff 2 times a week, do it 4 times a week. If you said that you were going to make 3 videos this year, make 5 videos this year, right? Knock it out of the park, because next year when they're looking at their budgeting again, they're like, oh man, Mark Shea really crushed it. I'm going to bring him back into my program, or Kurt Krebs crushed it. I'm going to bring him back into my program. I think that's the best way of doing it. So, the best news is, by you listening to this right now, you've already got some passion around it. Most of the people that I've seen come on here, I know that they have some experience with sponsorship. But if not, if you're listening to this show too, or catching the replay, it's okay, because you can prep now. You can do almost all of this up front. The thing that you really are not able to do right away is you can't actually figure out the company's goals if you don't know which company it is that's going to approach you, right? You can't do that, but you can figure out company goals and then approach them and then use all the same information. So I highly recommend you take these first couple steps, understand your goals. If you have a target company, you can understand their goals too. Analyze your reach, build a dashboard now, write it all down, get your resume, your pitch, all that stuff prepped ahead of time, so that when someone reaches out, you just pull it out, drop it in, you're good to go. So that was something I learned early on. I had to struggle through the first pitch there, and I really appreciate Jeff Vanestall for sticking with me, and he's actually been with me ever since. So I appreciate him sticking in there with me and then helping me now prepare for other conversations. Like when AMSOIL reached out to me, that was a pretty in-depth, contractual conversation that we went through. And I'm trying to now take some of the things I learned from all those experiences, what I heard from the show, share them with you. So at this point, I'm going to kind of start closing things out. I'll give you a minute if you have any last-minute questions. Go ahead and type them in. Or if you're joining later and watch the replay, go ahead and leave a question in the comments. I can go back and answer those. If you're listening to this in the audio version of the podcast, you can go ahead and send me an email, josh@sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com, or message me on any of the social media sites, and we can go through whatever questions you've got. And if you're listening to the audio version, please head over to iTunes, leave a rating and review. That would be great. It does wonders for the show. All right, well, that's it. You got more good stuff coming in the near future. I just released a Joe Sylvester podcast. I got another one that I'm working on around like gear that you should be considering if you want to kind of boost your content creation. But that's it. I'm going to leave you with this. Have fun and ride safe.